guys, it's Emily here from SpunOut. I'm here today talking with Erik Van Lennep from Cultivate. Erik, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very happy to be here and happy to talk to you guys. Hoping something comes out of this that's useful.
So we're chatting today about our general campaign, Get Your Eat On, all about food. And Erik has some thoughts today, what he'd like to talk to you about related to food and growing your own food and just growing in plants and nature in general. So Erik, any thoughts on where you'd like to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. First off, Emily and I, and also your man behind the camera, Ian there, we've been talking for quite a few minutes now about the sort of the bigger picture that this project is getting at with respect to our relationship to food here in Ireland, and particularly where those points of opportunity might be in terms of influencing that. And of course, that has to start with understanding what the more complex picture is about. One of the areas that I'm particularly interested in my work has to do with what you call food security, and that's basically the fact that we need to know where our food is coming from, and particularly a place with a history like Ireland, which incidentally I hear we're in our second potato famine technically right now because the weather has frozen the crop in the ground.
As of recently with all the snow.
Yeah. Now that's got a historical and perhaps kind of like a cultural, resonance. But it also comes directly to this topic of food security, which is essentially, if we weren't part of a global system of food distribution, we'd be done again. And the estimates are that at any given time, there's probably less than a week's food supply in the country. Because you have to realize that all we're doing right now is we're taking a cup and we're dipping it into a stream going past us of material goods and food and money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we are not actually producing very much of anything here. Even the Irish beef is divided into two chains, and I mean that's one of the things that most of the subsidies coming from Europe or from our own government are somehow attached to beef. Longer and separate conversation about the history of ourselves and beef. It goes way back into sort of the early Celtic banking system, which was live cattle. So we've always had that relationship with cattle, which is pretty important. But come back now to the current situation with the beef is that the really good stuff is basically shipped off to the Middle East and other areas where they're willing to pay top price for Irish beef because we grow really good beef here. The other end of the Irish beef is that legally you're allowed to bring in a carcass from Argentina or wherever, as long as you cut it up in Ireland.
Really?
You can stick the label on it and say, this is Irish beef.
Really? So if there's a stamp on it that says product of Ireland, it's not
It may just be it was cut here. The fact remains that right now we're dependent on a food supply which is basically like you can imagine there's a current that moves through the country from somewhere else, and we get down there and we dip our cup in. Now, one way you can really illustrate this to yourself is you go into the shop on the 23rd of December and you go back in there on the 26th or the 27th and you see what's on the shelves in between deliveries. There's no magical depot somewhere in the middle of the country, in Athlone or Mullingar, which has just got massive stacks of food waiting to roll out to the shops. It's not. It's rolling in from overseas. It's being grown in Spain. It's being grown even if you look at the fresh fruits and vegetables we get in the winter, they're being grown in South Africa, New Zealand, Morocco, Chile.
I had grapes from Namibia this morning, so I couldn't believe it.
Now, do you think Namibians get grapes from Namibia?
Yeah.
No way. They're very hungry people. So there's issues. Come back to the security end of the food security. And this is about the fact that we don't have control over our ability to guarantee our food supply. The only way to do that is not political, it's not economic, it's physical. We need to be growing it. We need to be growing our food.
A lot of us out there say the majority of people in Ireland, I feel, of a youngish age are kind of stuck in a shared accommodation. Space might be a little bit tight. It might not be a guarantee that you have a lovely garden outside the back. What are your thoughts and what are your tips or your advice for how people can actually bring in this aspect of growing your own food into a life that might not be the most conducive to it? Any thoughts?
Well, this is where we start to get into structural issues.
Okay.
We don't have to do things alone. I think that's a really important thing to get.
Okay.
You know, is our power is in terms of being able to build together, and it's in our ability to find shared interests. Not necessarily shared abilities, but compatible abilities, or compatibility in that respect. So you may not have access to a piece of land yourself, but it could be if you put yourself out there and start asking around, you will find that there's a piece of land not too far away that nobody really cares about what happens there.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're just saying, look, I want it for the summer.
Yeah.
And you can get a few other people together and you can actually teach yourselves how to grow on that piece of land. Or you can come back from that and say, all right, well, look, really what I just want to know is what's this about? And I do have a window.
Right.
And it does seem to get some sunlight in there.
Yeah.
So what can I grow on that is not just for ornament? And so then you can start that journey. Basically. You can get yourself a couple containers. You can get yourself a bit of soil. You can take it to the degree that you want to. But I wouldn't jump in if you're a real novice at this. I wouldn't jump in with something really complicated. I would just start with something very, very basic. Because what's the most important is you have a positive experience and you start to learn something about this. And I'll tell you, if you come home and it's all dead, you may not try again.
Yeah. Any suggestions on particular plants or herbs that would be good to start with?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. It totally depends on everything. So what you need to do is you need to suss out what direction. Say we'll keep it on a windowsill just for sake of argument.
For a lot of us in Dublin, that might be the best example.
Well, you might have access to a roof.
Fair enough. Yeah.
There's a lot of creativity out there, but again, I'm just going to assume that you don't know anything yet.
Okay.
And this is a starter, right?
New Year's resolution.
Exactly. First thing you need to do is you need to figure out which way your window faces. You need to know how much light's coming in, and then you need to think about what is possible given those conditions. So it's all about like growing stuff is really it's all about paying attention. It's about collecting information and paying attention to what's going on, and then it's matching.
Making it fit your own life and situation.
Well, it's not just your life and situation, which is an important part of it, but it's also your conditions. So maybe you could say, yeah, my life and situation is part of my conditions.
Yeah.
There's light, there's available water, there's the quality of the water, there's the soil, there's the size of the container, there's the temperature. And then we go into your conditions. So there's the time you have available to deal with it. The times of day even that you're around. Whether you've got flatmates that are, respectful of the situation or not. Whether they're going to put out the cigarettes or the pot. I mean, there's a lot of things involved there because it's living. It's like a little puppy. But unlike a little puppy, it's not going to cry very loud if it goes wanting. So you have to kind of supply that extra attention. So you got to kind of map all that out, and then within that realm of possibility, see what's workable. Stop talking about the environment. And really all you guys, stop talking about the environment that puts it outside yourself. How different would we approach our world if instead of saying the atmosphere, we said my air? What are you doing to my air?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, big difference. My food, it's not agriculture. It's not crops, it's my food. It's not water pollution. It's like this is my blood, it's running through the world now and it's gonna go through my veins next. And why is it dirty? If we change that, and that's a matter of changing vocabulary that changes perception, we start down a new road, and it's the road we need to be on.
That's really powerful. That's great. Cheers. Thanks for that.
No worries.